Business leaders face uncertainty and volatility. Non-humans are entering the workplace. Memes control the stock market. And geopolitics is a business concern. Disruption isn't a future concept. It's here. I am Justin Brady, and using 7,000 predictions and 12 major workplace trends from SHRM, you and I will sit down with psychologists, CEOs, scientists, entrepreneurs, and analysts to make sense of it all. This show isn't about the future. It's about actions to take tomorrow. This is Tomorrowist. I'm Justin Brady, and it's getting harder. Actually, I'm going to read something to you. It's getting harder for companies to keep politics out of the workplace. This was an August 5th headline from Chip Cutter in the Wall Street Journal. Civility is the topic today, and Arthur Brooks joins us to talk about that. Arthur, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hi, Justin. How are you?
Fantastic. Number one New York Times bestselling author. It's kind of a big deal. And Build the Life You Want is your brand new book, which just hit that list, so congratulations. But of course, you're also a professor at Harvard Business School, and I just read the Journal of Democracy piece, the brand new piece, the essay in there. So we're going to talk about America's crisis of civility today, and of course, we're going to go back to a little bit of one of the, I don't know how old school this is, but love your enemies is going to be kind of the big topic today. So this is really fascinating what I learned from the book. Are Republicans and Democrats these days kind of approaching more of a Middle East conflict zone? Does it look like that more than what it used to?
Yeah, I mean, the answer I'm supposed to give is no, but you actually have read some of my work, obviously, which shows that the research suggests that the answer is yes. There's a bunch of work on something called motive attribution asymmetry, which is, guys, academic gobbledygook for I believe that I love my country, but the other side hates our country. And that's one of the reasons that people can't come to terms. We have a belief, a mutual belief in this country that each side believes they love the country, but the other side hates it or hates something that we stand for. And that's one of the reasons we have this implacable hostile conflict. And the level that has reached, measured very responsibly, is at the same level as what we see in the Middle East. Thank God it hasn't gotten to any kind of violence, or at least not systematically so. Nothing like we see overseas. But it's a very critical situation nonetheless. And that's one of the reasons that our political situation is so acrimonious, that we have so little civility, because people don't think they have anything to be civil about at this point.
Yeah, 1/5, I think, in the book. Again, this was written a little while ago, but 1/5 of people in Love Your Enemies, you mentioned, have stopped talking to their loved ones since the 2016 election. When you wrote this, which was around the 2016 election, are you a little surprised to where we've ended up today?
Not by American standards. We find that these things happen relatively regularly. Only one time did it lead to a civil war under very different circumstances than what we see today. I'm not worried about that, obviously, but I am worried about the fact that we're less and less able to address the big crises that we have. Until there's greater unity across differences, we can't solve any problems. If you have a family where mom and dad, they can't even have a civil conversation with each other, they're not going to be able to take care of their kids properly. And in the United States, when Democrats and Republicans can't talk to each other, when the only way that people conduct a political campaign is 100% of what I want, where I'm getting nothing, where I just have to get 51% of the vote, then public policy is going to be a colossal ping pong match. Nothing is going to be stable. We're not going to solve our problems. The same thing is true, by the way, for the audience listening to us, when you have these ideological conflicts that are bleeding over to the workplace. When people won't talk to each other because something is happening outside of work, they can't actually solve problems inside the workplace. And this is going to diminish the capacity of organizations to effectively do what they're supposed to be doing. And that's exactly what's happening at workplaces all around the country.
Yeah, and that's a shame, because the workplace may be, I think you wrote about this in that essay, the workplace may be kind of the last frontier for us to actually have civil conversations.
Yeah. Well, we're at work. One of the things we're supposed to do is we're supposed to bond over a mutual interest in doing a good job. That's not politics. If you're going into your job at, wherever you happen to work, in the bank or the institution or the university in my case, and you're trying to do something together of worth that's paying you your salary, you shouldn't be impeding that by differences that you have that are not directly related to your workplace. I mean, that's just obvious. And yet that's what we're missing, because politics has pervaded every nook and cranny of American life. You can't go to a kid's birthday party without hearing about politics. You can't go to a baseball game without somebody unfurling a political banner. I mean, it's in every part of American life, including the workplace. And that's really hurting our country a lot, not because of the politics, but because the disagreement is getting in the way of doing the things that are important.
Right, but the disagreements are good, right? And do we encourage the disagreements at work? Do we discourage them? Is it a little in between? Because you talk a lot about how it's extremely important to heal and to have actual discussions. So do we have those discussions in the workplace? Do we make room for that? Do we just say, you know what, no politics? How do we handle that?
Well, to begin with, disagreement is healthy because competition is a good thing. The competition of ideas is fundamental to a free society. It's also fundamental to a good competitive workplace where we have a good product. If I'm the CEO, which I've been a CEO in my life, and I have everybody around me is going, yes, boss, I'm going to be making bad decisions, and I'm not going to be uncovering my own errors. We need disagreement in the workplace about the work. That's critical, that we have an environment of mutual respect, of civility, of tolerance, even love, by the way, about what we're doing. But there's no reason that we should be introducing extraneous disagreement about polarizing topics from outside the workplace. Now, sometimes you can have people who have a conversation about politics and it stays really civil, even though they disagree, no problem. In the same way that I can go to Harvard at the faculty lounge and I can, argue with one of my colleagues about whether or not the Red Sox or the Yankees are better. We're not going to hate each other over that, because that's just baseball.
Well,
Politics.
some people might.
If you're a Yankees fan, I realize that hits a little close to home. But if it's about politics at this point, politics has infected American culture in such a deleterious and dangerous way that we actually have to start putting up firewalls. If in fact Red Sox, Yankees, the rivalry, were making it impossible to work together, I, as the boss, would have to say, keep your rivalry about baseball out of the workplace, because it's slowing things down and making things worse. And that's basically what I think CEOs need to start doing about politics. It's like, don't bring it here. I don't want it on the Slack channel. I don't want any of these extraneous political and ideological fights making their way in. But why? Because that's what's ruining our country, and let's not ruin our business in the same way. Look, I teach at Harvard, and we're trying to talk about business and all kinds of things that are not politics, but politics has really hurt us and many other universities as well, because we put up too long with too many acrimonious discussions of things that were extraneous to what we were trying to do, and we're paying the price. The companies, that people representing companies in human resource departments who are listening to us right now, learn from our mistakes. Keep it out of the workplace.
Yeah, and we actually have a lot of executives that listen to this, human resource leaders being definitely a part of that. But I want to go back to something you said, which is really interesting. By encouraging, I don't know if there's a better way to say this. You probably know a better way to say this, but by encouraging disagreement at work, healthy disagreement at work, are you kind of implying that we're training people how to disagree outside of work? Can leaders train people how to have respectful, civil disagreements that may apply to their families and to the political discussion outside of the workplace?
For sure. Look, work is part of life. One of the big problems that we have with the whole discussion on work-life balance is it suggests that work and life are separate. No. Work is part of your life. You're supposed to take the lessons you learn in life that are really good into the workplace, and the lessons you learn at work that are really good for life back to your family. This should all be integrated such that we grow and we understand ourselves better as human beings, that we have more friendships and relationships in work and outside of work. There's nothing wrong with that. And a good boss, the good management of organization, should help people become better people. That's what they should be all about, actually, is trying to be happiness teachers and civility teachers. And they want their people to get better at work. And in so doing, they'll have a more loyal, efficient workforce, but also it's the ethical thing to do.
Yeah, I know what your thoughts are on the culture war. And some leaders feel that pressure to take one side or the other on various culture war issues. So obviously, civility in the workplace. Should politics be in the workplace? I'm hearing your answer on that, which is probably not. Use a lot of caution there. I don't want to misrepresent what you're saying, but should leaders take sides in the culture war, or should they, again, is this that is not a workplace discussion kind of a thing?
If it doesn't bear on the company, no. And it doesn't mean that leaders don't have an opinion. It doesn't mean that employees don't have an opinion. We don't have to be wishy-washy, but we don't have to have a culture war in every part of our lives. You don't have to bring the culture war about immigration or guns or abortion into the workplace when you're working in a bank. You don't have to do that. And it should be, in a way, it should be a respite. It should be an oasis from all of these things. Now, why do they do that? To begin with, is because a lot of CEOs, many of whom are listening to us now, are getting bullied. They're getting bullied by people who have set themselves up as kind of ersatz activists in the workplace. And I've seen this, I've seen the data on this. And a lot of people can relate to this idea. There's 3% of your workforce that's blowing up your Slack channel, saying that you're an irresponsible citizen in a bad company unless you make a statement that says this, that, and the other thing, which, by the way, 60% of your employees disagree with. They're keeping silent because they're being responsible employees. Don't fall prey to minoritarian bullies, like the 3% minority that's actually trying to blow you up. You got to stand up to that. And I'm telling you, when you do stand up to the 3%, they're trying to bully you into activism and taking a side in extraneous culture war issues. When you stand up and say no, your employees are going to cheer for you. I've seen this again and again and again, but they're not saying anything because, who needs problems? Well, guess who needs problems? The boss needs problems. That's why she's the boss, is because she's actually going to take the heat and do the hard thing. And in many cases in our society today, that's the hard thing. The hard thing is not saying, okay, I'll take sides on this political issue. It's no, I won't do it because there's a diversity of opinions inside my workforce and it's extraneous to our business. And that's what's tearing companies apart, and I won't do it. And if you don't like it, well, maybe you should work someplace else.
Yeah, and there is, like you say, bullying, which is a great way to put it, actually. That's I love that. It doesn't always feel like bullying, though, because some of these leaders are told, you have a platform. It's really important that you talk about X, Y, Z. And no one wants to be that person, that famous Edmund Burke quote. I actually have it written down, like, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And we always think of the images from, the communist images of people refusing to comply and speaking out against the evil in the world. I think everyone convinces themselves that, like you said earlier, they're the loving one, everyone else is the hate one. I need to be on the record here to support what is right. And if someone who believes that strongly, would you still tell them, hey, it's still culture war stuff, dude? Got to be real careful and avoid it at work.
Yeah. And if I were on the board of directors or I were a major shareholder for a lot of these companies, I would say, hey, guess what? There's a lot we disagree on. There's really a lot that we disagree on in this country and in the constituents of this company. Let's think about something we all agree on, which is this company doing really well and making a great product and paying salaries so that our employees can pay their mortgages and support their families. That's a good thing we can all agree on. Let's agree on that, and let's not screw it up by distracting ourselves and the public's attention towards something that's extraneous to what we do. It's frankly irresponsible leadership to do that.
Yeah, and the lack of civility, this is something you write, which ties into this really well. The lack of civility is directly related to the destruction of commerce and capitalism itself, which I never made that connection. I don't know if it was in the essay or if it was in Love Your Enemies, but I never made that connection. And so are leaders encouraging capitalism and commerce by encouraging civility and staying out of the divisiveness and out of the culture war?
Yeah, the more that the one thing that the two sides in the culture war have in common is that this is a crummy country full of crooks. It's just that they say the crooks are on the other side. The lower the trust is going to be in the public. And this is what we see. The one thing that both major political parties are sort of agreeing on at this point is that business is full of, predatory, big business capitalist types. Why? Because they actually want to gin up fear and get support for their cause. And anger and fear are the best way that you can get people to support you immediately. That's how you get energy on your side. Well, guess what? When you do that, you're lowering the trust that people actually have in the overall system, in the system of politics. The reason that people don't really trust capitalism today is the same reason that young people often say they don't trust democracy. Democracy is at an all-time favorability low for people under 30 today. Contemplate this. I mean, the secrets to American success are capitalism and democracy, aka democratic capitalism. And when, because of politics and the culture war, we're bashing the entire system and we lower the trust, especially for people who are coming into the workforce for the first time, all we're doing is we're hurting ourselves, perhaps beyond measure at this point. I hope we can get it back, but man, when I look at the numbers, I don't like what I see. And I know where the blame lies. The blame lies in the culture war.
You also go into the fact that it's not even just capitalism and the economy and economic forces. And you just said it right here, that the lack of civility has the potential to, and is directly related to the representative democracy we have in and of itself. Representative democracy relies on us being civil. That gets a direct path.
Totally. Absolutely. Look, if we're not civil to each other, if we're not listening to each other, we will not have trust for each other. We won't even know each other. And under those circumstances, we can't do business with each other. We're not, and look, I mean, this is the case in which neither side is going to trust the outcome of an election, for example. Neither side is going to trust that business leaders are not trying to cheat the public writ large. Nobody's going to trust the government. And the reason is because our elected leaders, our political representatives are encouraging their own side not to trust anybody.
Yeah, a lot of people say, well, if they would just change, if the political leaders would just change, then things would be right. But I don't think it's going to happen that way. It's going to have to come from us, because I always like to say, we get the leaders, we get the lawmakers we deserve. Because if we encourage, and you talk about this, you talk about we're basically electing narcissists. So I'm not pointing fingers at any specific politician, but we're electing narcissists because we ourselves have drifted from common good to narcissism. Like, there's some figure you have, which is like almost everybody believes that they're the most important person, or they're a very important person.
Yeah. No, this is and again, fortunately, this tends to come in waves. What you find is that we go through waves in American politics where people will tend to elect a bully on their side, because even though we don't like bullies, we're more afraid of the other side's bullies. And this is, in the game theory literature, it's called a suboptimal equilibrium, where it's like, it's not optimal, it's not good, but it's an equilibrium, meaning that we can kind of ping pong back and forth between bullying types of leaders who are bad mouthing other people, saying the kind of thing that we would punish our children for talking a particular way. I mean, look at presidential debates these days. Oh. When you see the presidential debates and the people are talking to each other in a way that you would yell at your kid for talking to somebody in that way. And yet we're going, yeah, that's right. To the television. This is a little bit at odds with our own values. The good news is we tend to break out of this. And the reason is because somebody figures out, and we're already starting to see it, by the way. The good news, there's green shoots at the state and local level where there's lots and lots of good representatives, where people start to figure out that the big majority of Americans hate it. Right now, 93% of Americans say they hate how polarized we've become. We continue along these lines because we're in this equilibrium. But, this at various times in American history, you've had unifying leaders come along and people said, yep, I'm ready for that now. I mean, that's sort of the Ronald Reagan secret. I mean, like or hate his policies. My parents thought he was going to get us into a nuclear war and throw a granny out in the snow. But we all had to recognize that when he said, I love this country and I love the people coming into this country and I want more of the American spirit and our best days are ahead of us, that unified a big part of the country around some ideals that we all had in common. I believe we actually still do have in common, but we're being persuaded to the contrary by polarizing leaders.
The figure's really striking. 93% of Americans really hate the division. And as I'm reading your essay, as I'm reading your book, I'm like, that's a big number, 93%. But why are we still addicted to, as what you call, why do we still have this contempt addiction that pulls us away from what we really want, which is unity?
Well, that's when leadership really comes into play. When you have polarizing leaders that are bullies, generally speaking, they're not leaders, they're followers. They're followers of these social trends. Leaders will break us out of that equilibrium. And what we'll find is that tends to happen at the state and local level, then it filters upward into the national scene. My strong prediction is in the next 5 years, we're going to start seeing more unifying activity from probably both parties. And we're going to we'll be talking about leaders who look very different than the kinds of, sorry candidates that we see these days.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all crave that. So is it within our best interest then to have the unifying conversations and push for it ourselves? Because is that how everybody listening to this, is that how they push for more unity? And this is just be the last quick question, but we just essentially demand more of it.
Yeah, what do we do? And the answer is be the solution to the problem. Is go looking for contempt online or in the workplace and be the balm of Gilead to say this is an opportunity to listen as opposed to fighting. This is an opportunity to talk about something unifying as opposed to continue to polarize in this particular way. Do it in your family. Be a missionary for these particular ideas. Second, stand up to the man. Turn off the media that's profiting from this. Remember, when you hate, somebody's profiting, and it's not you. It's some social media guy getting his jollies, or a big network running political shows that are unbelievably dishonest and laughably untrustworthy, but they're trying to warp your emotions. Turn off the man under these circumstances. And last but not least, let's have a little bit of clarity and reality, a little reality check. Look, this is still the greatest, most upwardly mobile, freest country in the history of the world, and everybody still wants to come here. Let's not screw that up. Let's remember that, God bless America. We should be grateful for this particular country and be a little bit more overt about that. And that's going to be something that each of us can actually do, bring some happiness around us to quell some of the polarizing arguments that we're having, and guess what? Get happier.
Professor Arthur Brooks, #1 New York Times bestselling author of Build the Life You Want. Everybody, we've been talking about Love Your Enemies today, but of course, Professor Brooks, you have a lot of really, really great titles people should check out. Thank you so much for coming on Tomorrowist. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Justin, and thanks for the work that you're doing to make a better workplace and make a better America.
Before we say goodbye, I encourage you to subscribe to Tomorrowist wherever you get your podcasts. You can find all our episodes at shrm.org/Tomorrowist, and while you're there, sign up for our weekly newsletter. Thanks for listening, and remember, the workplace is changing rapidly. You don't have time to be a futurist. Be a Tomorrowist.